It seems after over a year and a half of the Israeli genocide in Gaza, David Lammy has finally found a conscience. He's finally realised that what was obviously bad to every single observer up to now was indeed absolutely bad, and that just doing a symbolic retraction of arms licenses whilst still selling F-35 fighter jet parts throughout the entirety of the genocide as well wasn't good enough, and that they actually needed some material action to try and push the envelope on this. Of course, he's still been over to Israel to shake hands with Netanyahu. He's had meetings with the ambassador. He has been very complimentary over Israel and has only given, quite frankly, token pushback over the genocide up to now. But finally he has decided that we need to take some action. So there's been a joint statement, essentially by Canada and by France and by the UK, saying, please let aid into Gaza and let there try and be at least some kind of ceasefire. Otherwise, we'll cancel trade deals and impose some kinds of sanctions. Now, this, of course, is something that should have been done at literally any point before now. And not even since October the 7th. This should have been the position over the occupied territories that Israel have been committing continual human rights violations for the last 78 years. So this didn't start in October the 7th, and our complicity in Israel's colonization of Palestine has been ever present ever since the foundation of the State of Israel in 1948. So there should have been literally any action before now, but better late than never. What's interesting though, what's very, very interesting, is that The Independent has a theory. They've found someone who is to blame for why David Lammy hasn't, up until now, imposed real material opposition to Israel's genocide in Gaza. Let's have a look and see who The Independent blame for this. Why Starmer's government has waited until now to take action on Israel. As David Lammy announces the suspension of trade talks with Israel and new sanctions over the Gaza humanitarian crisis, political editor David Maddox explains why action wasn't taken sooner. Frustration spilled over in the Commons on Tuesday from Labour MPs and others over the time it has taken for Keir Starmer's government to step up and take action against Israel over the Gaza crisis. As the UN warned that 14,000 babies risked deaths from malnutrition by Thursday without urgent aid, there was a sense that by the time Foreign Secretary David Lammy got to his feet, it was already too late and not enough. And that's true, again, for all of the reasons I mentioned before, because of course Israel has been committing war crimes, crimes against humanity, acts that are illegal under international law for decades in their entire occupation of Palestine. So the fact that it has waited until there might be mass infanticide, that suddenly David Lammy has found a voice. And even in his statement condemning Israel, he still had to couch it by saying, oh, but I've always supported the state of Israel. I'm like, yeah, we know, David, we know. He announced the largely symbolic move of suspending trade talks with Israel and sanctions against some extremists, and not even all the extremists, only some extremists, rather than, the explicitly state-backed settlement project in the West Bank, again illegal under international law, that we've been giving total support to up until now, even as much as selling oil drilling licenses to companies who are actively engaging in funding of the settlement program in the West Bank. So we've been totally complicit in these violations of international law, this land theft. And political parties have covered this up as well. I remember there was a Tory minister, Alan Duncan, who got threatened and blackmailed by people within the Tory party because he had explicitly said in his position that Israel was engaging in land grabs, and this was too much given how many people in the Conservative Party are part of Conservative Friends of Israel. Edward Lee, the father of the House, even went so far as to say such a thing. So this is absolutely unilateral across Parliament, that they wanted to see this before now, and it's taken essentially to the point where mass infanticide is going to happen. David Lammy to do anything, and as has been pointed out in this article, it is largely symbolic. But there was no full suspension of arms sales nor sanctions against ministers in Benjamin Netanyahu's government. And of course, Zara Sultana was right to point this out and asked David Lammy why he could sleep at night. And of course, David Lammy completely dismissed such an argument and couldn't even give her a proper answer. But the question is, why has it taken so long for the UK government to act even in this limited and specific way? Why is it only now that they are tightening the screw? You'll never guess. You'll never ever guess who this article blames for Labour not taking action over Israel before now. Yes, indeed. He is living rent-free in the head of our media class because, of course, they're going to blame Jeremy Corbyn, the jumbly-crumbly concrete man himself, for the reasons why Labour has been facilitating a genocide for the last 20 months. What a shock. It's the jam man himself that's to blame for this, and not indeed the fact that there is Israeli lobbyists who are explicitly funding Keir Starmer's political programme. Labour Together, funded by Israeli lobbyists. They have got people on the benches who have close relationships with Israeli lobbyists. It is clear as day, given that the current spokesperson for Benjamin Netanyahu is the ex-chair of Labour Friends of Israel, that there is huge amounts of lobbying and mutual interest between the current government and Israel. No, it's Jeremy Corbyn's fault, apparently. In reality, Labour under Sir Keir Starmer has been held back by a sense of shame. A visible reminder of this came when the former leader Jeremy Corbyn got to his feet to challenge David Lammy. Under Corbyn's leadership, Labour became so immersed in anti-Semitism and so marginalised the Jewish community that the party has had to continue working hard to restore its reputation. Now, of course, Jeremy Corbyn has never been anti-Semitic. He's never said anything anti-Semitic. What he has been is a champion of the Palestinian cause and opposed those same Israeli lobby interests that now have their support on the Labour benches in government. The fact that they're even trying to go with this narrative in 2025, given that we all know now that it was all a scam, that it was all nonsense, it was all fabricated to try and smear somebody because of their foreign policy positions, given how they've tried to pull the wool over the eyes of the British people over the Israeli genocide in Gaza, and it hasn't worked. People across the country are still very pro-Palestine broadly, given what they've been seeing on their social media feeds, and no amount of ridiculous propaganda and lies and half-truths and hasbara has managed to be able to stop people sympathising with Palestine, right? Surely they can't be still going with this line now, all these years later, that this anti-Semitism crisis was anything other than a total fabrication. That's what it's always been about from the start, removing any kind of left-wing influence in the Labour Party and replacing it with Sir Trilateral Commission, with somebody entirely in hock to American imperial interests. Because, of course, that is who is in control in this regard. It is not some sneaky Zionist Jewish conspiracy, like some people would like to say that it is. No, it is the Americans, because they are the most ardent Zionists. It is the American State Department, the people who have pushed these kind of things, the people in the Britain-America Project, people who want to keep Atlanticism at the core of British politics that are the problem here, because those are the ones who are the most supportive of Israel. It is nothing to do with people's ethnicity. This is about geopolitics. And they had to try and foment a narrative that would try and remove Jeremy Corbyn. And so they settled upon his support of the Palestinian people. And they got their wish when Keir Starmer got into government, because all of that positioning, all of that threat of another anti-Semitism scandal contributed to our government being entirely subsumed by the American State Department's interests over our interaction during the Gaza conflict, during the Israeli genocide in Palestine. For this reason, Sir Keir and Mr. Lammy have worked hard to support Israel's right to defend itself in the wake of the horrific 7th of October attacks by Hamas. Well, no, it's not for that reason. It's because they have support of people who are members of the Israeli lobby, but go ahead. As attacks on Gaza by Israel have intensified, Labour had softly attempted to pressure Netanyahu's government into restraint, and never been willing to go the extra mile. Arguably, as Kit Malthouse and other MPs from 5 different political parties claimed in the chamber, they have still not gone far enough. And they are right. They're absolutely right. All sides of the House are united in saying that the Labour government has been terrible on what's happening in Israel and Palestine. But the reality is that the urgency and horror of the situation now facing the people in Gaza is the tipping point where imminent catastrophe outweighs the shame of Labour's recent political past. Again, we literally are in this position because that's what the Israeli lobby wanted to get out of removing pro-Palestinian sentiment from the Labour Party. You smear it as being anti-Semitic, and then there is no position for it to be able to influence the Labour leadership, and so they are therefore willing participants in the genocide. So Keir's government is already coming under pressure internally from Labour MPs over his harsh rhetoric on migration, welfare and winter fuel payments, and the lack of action against Israel is adding fuel to our ever-growing rebellion. Except for the Tory front bench, who decided Lammy's weak statement was too pro-Hamas. It is crazy, really, isn't it, that so much so is the death of the Tory party from being completely out of step with political opinion. Their backbenchers desperately trying to wrestle some sense of normalcy and some sense of proprietary out of the Tory party, and Badenoch, in her infinite wrecking campaign, has decided to move them even further away from public opinion by opposing the government's weak source response to Israel. The government had no choice but to send Mr. Lammy out to make a statement in the Commons, not only to quell the fury of backbenchers, but also because they are faced in a situation that even Donald Trump finds unacceptable. As the Prime Minister said himself, it is utterly intolerable. The issue will be, though, whether these latest measures are too little too late. Well, people like The Independent, people like The Guardian and The Times and The Telegraph and The Mail and The Sun and everybody else, the whole rogues gallery of Fleet Street, were all complicit in fomenting the popular sentiment that the Labour Party could not be pro-Palestinian or oppose Israel lest they be claimed to be anti-Semitic. They created a bogus conspiracy about potential anti-Semitism within Jeremy Corbyn's political project, and this was used to beat any pro-Palestinian sentiment out of public life entirely, essentially. That was the cudgel that was used, and it was done so that we could install somebody who was entirely amenable to American imperial interests in number 10. And what do we have to show from it? Tens of thousands of dead children. A genocide, live streamed, broadcast on social media to everyone to see, except apparently Keir Starmer and David Lammy refused to see it. Well, just like in all of the situations that have arisen since the Wrecking campaign of 2017 and 2019, you got what you wanted. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for memberships. It's just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.